14 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lived.
And 14 Bannerman Road is the name of my podcast about it. This time, Mona Lisa's Revenge, parts 1 and 2, both written by Phil Ford and directed by Joss Agnew, with part 1 first broadcast on the 12th of November 2009, and part 2 first broadcast on the 13th of November 2009. Don't remember much about this one plot-wise. I do have a strange feeling that I found the conclusion unsatisfying, which is of course Phil's speciality. We're on first name terms now. I feel like once you criticise a guy enough, you can drop the formalities. But let's stop right then on and kick it off with, as usual, 13 Bannerman Road is where Sarah Jane Smith lives. And then cold open. The gang is at school in what looks like an art class. They got the kind of, all the art's all on the walls. They got the kind of like paint all over the desks and everything. Clyde is drawing K9. There's a little back and forth with Luke saying about how art can be broken down into maths, really. And then Clyde saying, no, it comes from the soul. Ronnie's watching on. The class is 11T. Maybe this is a form room that doubles as an art room. Doesn't really matter. Year 11 is GCSE year, so it checks out. Haresh, as the head teacher of the school, he comes in. Ronnie says he's looking serious. He takes over from who I assume is their form tutor, Mrs. Taylor, because he has an announcement to make, and he's making the announcement to the whole form, but apparently it really concerns Clyde. He says he's got an email from a Mr. Harding, who is the curator of the International Museum, and then we cut to this Mr. Harding. He was talking about an exhibit that has finally come into his care, as his assistant compliments him and says that nobody else would have been man enough to dedicate themselves to the years of planning work. They're both sort of a bit frumpy, very curator types, they're quite exaggerated. Mr. Harding's sort of the eccentric old man, and then the assistant, who we'll learn the name of soon, she's sort of the way she's dressed and her hairstyle and everything, The exhibit is, of course, the Mona Lisa, as the title states. Cut back to Haresh. The whole class is going to see it because Clyde won an art competition that the museum held. But Clyde says, I never entered any art. And Luke reveals that he did it on Clyde's behalf. And Clyde says that it's not good for his image because he's meant to be cool, you see. But, on the one hand, I quite like that he's got this sort of softer artistic side, and underneath the whole facade you see it. But it's a little frustrating when he's putting up the facade when you know it's all fake. But, I guess it's fine. The painting itself does not seem to have an awful lot of security about it. Not so much as a glass pane to protect it. You can just go up there and touch all the paint, which I assume is not what they'd like. The assistant, who is called Miss Trupp, she seems absolutely enamoured with the curator, to the point that she basically went in for a kiss as he walked on by oblivious. When they leave the room, the frame of the Mona Lisa has this red effect around it, and we get a close-up on her hand moving, which I assume it's just done by filming a hand, and then they put that footage on top of the footage of the painting, and they do a lot of colour correction and make it all look right. But it's very well done. I applaud that. It looks good. And then we roll the titles, dead on the 4-minute mark. Luke comes home, about to tell Sarah Jane the news, and she says she's in his room, and in his room it's a right sty, mouldy cups, etc. And Sarah Jane says that he's going to have to clean it tonight with no help from K9. And Luke kicks off a bit, is saying that she keeps going on about him having a normal life, but then when he acts like a normal teenager, she wants the perfect Bane-made son. And it's interesting. And it's a bit out of the blue, because we haven't really had hints that their relationship is like this before. And then later on, maybe even in part 2, he says this is their first row. But the way it is, it feels like it's something that's been bubbling under the surface a bit that we haven't really necessarily seen. The next day gets indicated by just us being outside the gallery now. The whole class is there, Haresh is there. He's telling them all not to run in, so of course they run in. They all have to hand in their phones on entry. Clyde seems way too excited to pick up a free guidebook, but it's just sort of drawing our attention to it because it will come in handy later. Luke turns one down. Clyde asks him about Sarah Jane, and Luke says, well, we aren't really talking right now. And then before the conversation could progress, Clyde literally bumps into Haresh, who is overly chummy with him, and says, oh, well, now you've won this art competition, we see how much effort you can put into your art and everything. You might excel in other studies now, huh? Nudge, nudge. Which feels a bit like a comment on the British education system. It feels quite accurate to the behaviour of some teachers, actually. They're like, oh, well, we'll get chummy with you now that you're excelling in something and making the school look good, aren't you? Yes, you want to excel in other areas. And, not really dealing with the actual issues that might be the reason for him not excelling in those areas. And then Miss Trupp comes in to guide them all upstairs. As they're going through, Luke is saying, "Oh, I don't really get art," and he picks up a Chinese puzzle box, and then Clyde goes, "You better put that back down." It's interesting to see the bit of role reversal here, where Clyde is sort of the more, "Oh, put that down." That's what you expect from Luke. But where are the glass boxes? This is how priceless art gets broken. It's a load of unprotected art just out here on plinths, plus bringing in a load of school kids. Bad idea. Awful idea. Miss Trupp brings down the curator, Mr. Harding, to see Clyde. I should mention, of course, that Clyde's artistic talent was first seen in Mark of the Berserker, and so it's very nice that it gets even further expanded upon as we go along. Miss Trupp is very awkward. She shakes Clyde's hand for far too long, and Mr. Harding just sort of sends her off to go and check on the Mona Lisa again, while he directs the class to Clyde's actual work. And Trupp sort of goes off to lament to the Mona Lisa about how Harding loves the painting more than her. And then, as she's about to walk off, the painting tells her, "Do us all a favour and quit your moaning," in a northern accent, for no well-explained reason. She's played by Saran Jones. The Mona Lisa is played by Saran Jones, who is from Manchester. But she later went on to play Idris and then the humanoid manifestation of the TARDIS in a Doctor Who episode. And in that episode, I think she put on an RP accent, as far as I can remember. So could she not have tried Italian? Or, here's a suggestion, could they not have got someone Italian? It's just an odd choice. Anyway, the Mona Lisa is surprised that anyone can hear her. And when we look now, she's now fully Saran Jones, who doesn't look an awful lot like the Mona Lisa. I mean, they've like put makeup on her eyebrows and everything, but like it's just Saran Jones. But I guess I can suspend my disbelief more visually than I can audibly. It's the voice that really gets me. And she reaches out of the painting, and we hear Trupp scream, and they do their sort of classic thing where you hear the scream, but you don't actually see what's going on. And now we get to the unveiling of Clyde's art. And it's not bad, but let me describe it. So there's fire in the background. It's a kind of city with a walkway, and then on the walkway, in the foreground, are three women, and their midriffs are exposed, and they have very tiny little skinny waists, and they have large hips, and they have large busts, and they're all posing together Charlie's Angels style. It might literally be a Charlie's Angels pose, I don't know. And they're holding Sontaran blasters. So it's very much teenage boy artwork. And I struggle to see it being held in such an esteemed position in the same gallery, museum, whatever, that is currently showcasing the Mona Lisa. Especially when none of the classmates make fun of it, and they all cheer for Clyde instead, even Mrs. Taylor. So we've been asked to do a lot of disbelief suspension in a very short space of time. Now, the focus is, of course, the Sontaran blasters. Harding comments on them. Clyde tells Luke not to let on to Sarah Jane that he's been drawing this, or to tell her that he was also drawing K9. But we know that Luke won't do that, because he's the one who entered the art into the competition, so he must think it's okay to show them off to the world. And Clyde has a little sort of moment of building his confidence, and sort of you see beneath the facade that he puts up when he realizes that maybe he can make something of his art, which is somewhat cute. It's just not possibly the best artwork to showcase it with. And then he mentions that when he was little, he'd draw for company. And the way he speaks, he implies, oh, before my siblings came along. Because he says, when I was little, no brothers or sisters. And it's a bit ambiguous, because he could be little and have no brothers or sisters, and now be older and still not have any brothers and sisters. But it seems weird to bring up that he didn't have any if he still doesn't have any. And if he does have some now, this is the first we've heard of it. Unless he was talking about that new child that his dad was having with the other lady, but surely he wasn't in contact with them or anything. It just seems weird to raise all these questions now with that little throwaway line. So it's now time for the class to all be brought in to see the Mona Lisa by Harding. She's covered up with a curtain. He unveils it, and it's Mrs. Trupp. And Harding runs off to a phone to call security and say that the Mona Lisa has been stolen. We cut to Sarah Jane in the attic, and Mr. Smith says that he scanned her brain and she seems a bit off, which is a bit creepy. I imagine he's just everyone in the attic, he just likes to scan their brains every now and then, and they just have to accept that that's the consequence of having a supercomputer in their wall. Sarah Jane explains that it's Luke that's growing up that's bothering her, and the way she talks about him is as if she wishes he could be the young Bane boy again, which is, that should not be the takeaway from the argument that they had. She should be accepting that he's getting older, but I guess maybe she'll come round by the end. And she does make the point that most parents have years to figure it out while their child is still a baby and a toddler and everything, but she is still getting used to it now, and then she's getting the feeling that, you know, now Luke is growing up, he's becoming his own person, he might end up leaving before she's even spent enough time with him. Harding's having a go, saying that they should have upped security after something was stolen at Easter, which is a reference to that Doctor Who Easter special, where they got on the bus and went to the desert planet and all the stuff. He also says that the French will have his head. I'm sure somebody was very proud of that joke. The school is being evacuated out as the police come in. We see the Mona Lisa Saran Jones as the Mona Lisa escaped from the canvas, looking on, laughing, and the gang say that this is very odd and maybe they should phone Sarah Jane, but Luke shuts that idea down. He says he needs the loo to Haresh, and then Haresh says go quickly and then come back to the coach because we're all being escorted out because this is now a crime scene. The others lie and say, oh, we need the loo too, because they assume that Luke was lying and it was a cover, but then he actually needs the loo, and it's a funny moment. It's not that funny, but you know, it's intended to be a funny moment. Mr. Smith shows Sarah Jane the BBC News report of the theft, and because it's all BBC, they can actually get Lisa Mazimba to record a bit for it, and I always quite enjoy it when they do that. So it's like it's an official BBC News report, but it's in the context of the show. That's neat. This, of course, lets Sarah Jane know that the class is there, and then she sees that Luke didn't tell her about it. Apparently, he doesn't need parental or guardian's permission then, but maybe he forged it, I don't know. Clyde proves that picking up that free thing at the start that he was very excited to pick up and go, hey, look, I picked up a thing so we can make Chekhov's guidebook and then fire it now. It comes in handy because it contains a map that lets them try and find a way around. Sort of the police are blocking a doorway, so like, oh, maybe we can find another doorway in. Sarah Jane tries to call Luke, but of course they had to give up their phones. They haven't collected them back yet. Mr. Smith hacks the police, because of course he does, and shows Sarah Jane the painting, which of course now is Mrs. Trupp, and says that it contains the brushstrokes of Leonardo da Vinci, so technically it is the Mona Lisa, but now it looks like Mrs. Trupp, so he scans that, finds out who she is, pulls up her profile on a dating site, which is called peapodsoulmates.com, which is that's definitely something I'd reference. If I were in the business of making TV shows and I had to come up with a name for a dating site, I would reference peapodsoulmates.com, and I'd see if anybody else had watched Sarah Jane Adventures and picked up on that reference. But that's the profile on her on the internet that has the most info about her. So Mrs. Smith goes through reading out the profile and says that Trupp describes herself as willing to try, and then Sarah Jane hurriedly cuts him off. And I think we might have found this show's first joke for the adults. So I will be interested to see if there are any more of those, because I don't remember that at all. But that's interesting that they'll shove in a little something there that you go, what is she willing to try? Mrs. Smith relays that she is still alive and conscious, but she is trapped in the painting, which is quite awful when you think about it. She's able to sit there and think and feel, but not interact with anything. And this, of course, piques Sarah Jane's interest, who asks that if that's Phyllis Trupp in the painting, where's the Mona Lisa gone? She's a painting that's come to life, which isn't the first time that Who has done that. There was a Who episode in 2006 with a girl who could bring drawings to life. And then There was a later one with the 12th Doctor too. So it's kind of a classic of the Whoniverse. There's a lot of Clyde quipping with a clunky reference to a fake video game, and then him being kicked out of the Cubs, and then saying that Rani should ask Haresh to get in touch so he can put his art up in their lounge, and all just sort of these things because he was talking about the Cubs because they was talking about the map, and then the show does its kind of if misogyny is bad, therefore misandry is good kind of thing. When Rani just exasperatedly goes, "Oh, men and maps," because Clyde and Luke are struggling to read it. But that's all. They're all kind of throwaway lines to stall until they realise that one of the blasters has gone missing from Clyde's artwork. Harding bursts in. He's very angry that the gang haven't left yet, but then they show him the gun is missing, and he is flabbergasted by this, and he's all touching the paint because none of this art is protected. He's touching it to see that it wasn't painted out. It's the paint is dry. The gun has just somehow been taken, which is when out pops the Mona Lisa, who I'm going to refer to as Mona from now on, even though that just means lady. We'll get to that. She pops out with the gun pointed at them. Haresh is outside on the phone to Geeta, talking about Rani, saying the police won't let him back in. He last saw her going to the loo. He can't phone her because the gallery took the phone. Seems like she hasn't collected her phone yet. Sarah Jane turns up, and she says she might be able to get in as a journalist, to report about this. She'll be able to check on the gang then. And she not so subtly brandishes her sonic lipstick, so we know how she's really going to get in. The gang and Harding ask Mona who she is. She says she's the real Mona Lisa. And they're like, well, we're a bit unconvinced by this because, perhaps in part because her mannerisms are very sassy. She's sort of played for laughs, and she with her accent and everything, they just go, oh, let's just create this character rather than even trying to pretend that this is how the Mona Lisa would actually act. They've gone, no, she's just gonna be a bit of comic relief. She also seems green screened into some of the shots. I can't tell if it's a green screen or weird lighting on a green screen, but it seems like for some of the shots she was shot at a different time to everyone else, and also the way they sort of go Mona Lisa on her own, then reaction shot from everybody else. She's sort of not in the shot with them, and we cut back and forth from the different perspectives to try and stitch it together. But then she is with them again, and she walks through, so I'm not really sure if they've just set it up weird with weird lighting, or if she was against the green screen, or quite what was going on. But Lucas suggests that she's alien, because, normally paintings don't come to life. And she says, among many other things, that Leonardo da Vinci had to blag the oils from his weirdo neighbour to paint her, and it feels a little bit hint, hint. And then she says that she wants some fun, so she's going to start with target practice, and the gang flee as she starts shooting at them, and she shoots through an artwork and leaves a smoking hole in it and everything, and she is left in the room with just Harding in there. Sarah Jane has got herself in with her Sonic. We don't see her doing that. We sort of cut to her brandishing the Sonic, and then cut to her going, oh, Sonic Scarlet is my favourite shade, and she's inside. And when Rani says to Luke that we should probably find her, Luke tries to shut it down again, which prompts Clyde to explain that they had a Barney, Rani, and Luke wonders where the police are, and the gang looks around at the paintings, seeing police officers and staff members are all trapped in them. Mona mentions that every time Harding came to the Louvre to see her, he put up a struggle when they tried to move him along until eventually he got himself banned, and he accepts that, well, if she knows that, then it really is her. It's the Mona Lisa come to life. And to be honest, this is all he's ever wanted because he's absolutely enamoured with her. Interestingly, Saran Jones has played two characters where people have suggested that folk are attracted to an object. Because she was playing a TARDIS, and okay, TARDISes do have consciousnesses and whatever, and she was just a vessel with a mouthpiece, etc. But she's played a painting, and people have gone, oh, you're a bit too attracted to that painting, and then she's played a TARDIS, and people have gone, oh, you're a bit too attracted to that TARDIS. And it's just interesting, the sort of casting characters, that the similarities between them. I'm not sure if I can. At this point, I'm not sure if I'm really into this episode. It just seems so spin the wheel that it's the Mona Lisa, but spin. She's from Manchester. Spin. She's got a Sontaran blaster. I tell you what, it's a very long-winded way to not have to make a new prop. It's just to incorporate that back in so they can use it again. Anyway, she says to Harding that they need to find her brother. Sarah Jane is walking around, she's scanning, she picks up 2 distinct traces of alien activity. And Mona says to Harding that she's never seen her brother, but she knows that he was painted at the same time in the same place, next door, in fact. We know that Leo had a neighbour, Leonardo da Vinci had a neighbour, the weirdo neighbour. As far as I'm aware, entirely fictional. There is no other artist who lived next door. But Harding knows exactly the painting. The gang, having noticed all the people trapped in the paintings, run to the door, not much fancy in getting trapped in a painting too. But by this point, the door is locked. It's a glass door, so they spy Sarah Jane's car outside. Sarah Jane has gone into the room where the painting of Phyllis Trapp is, and she's scanning her and picks up some sort of residual alien energy. I'm a little bit more into this bit, the sort of mystery of it all and the alien powers, and the Mona Lisa is able to trap people in paintings, and is she an alien? What's her backstory? I'm still interested in that. It's not. You don't write the episode off completely. This is still interesting. Harding comes in with Mona. Sarah Jane hides. He shows Mona a self-portrait by Giuseppe Di Cattivo, who is the fictional neighbour of Da Vinci. They mention that he's often compared to Hieronymus Bosch. They also mention he died in a lunatic asylum. Mona senses that this isn't the right painting, but she does find Sarah Jane and tells her to come out because I can hear you breathing. I don't often mention the background music unless it's licensed music. This isn't licensed music as far as I'm aware, but they're playing some kind of jaunty violin stuff. It's quite museum appropriate. Mona mentions taking the blaster from Clyde's painting, so Sarah Jane knows that he's been painting this sort of stuff. And Sarah Jane says to Harding, I'll help you sort all this out. But Harding says, oh, well, no, this is okay, actually. I'm quite alright, I don't need any help. And Sarah Jane reminds him that Mona trapped Trupp in a painting, in case he'd forgotten, and she is quite dangerous, actually. Mona mentions that Sarah Jane, I heard you. I heard Luke talking about keeping you out of it. And then there's a loud growling that even the gang can hear, and Mona says, that is my brother. And she glows with red energy, and when Sarah Jane asks what's happening, Mona says, I'll put you in the picture, because she seems very fond of puns. And then she reaches out for Sarah Jane, who screams, no! And then the gang all hear and they come rushing in, and they find that Sarah Jane is trapped in a painting, and Mona says that is how she'll stay forever, and we roll the credits on part 1. So overall, this is possibly one of the silliest setups that we've had. But as the tension ratchets up towards the end, I've liked it a lot more. So there is a hype for part 2 if it can continue that on. Maybe it's interesting to note that Gallifreyan art from the 50th anniversary was also kind of more than it seemed. And maybe that's not relevant here, but who seems to like this theme of artwork coming to life, having more than it seems being a portal? It's just a very, very Doctor Who-y kind of thing. So we start part 2, as we usually do, with 13 Bannerman Road and then Previously On, and then the titles. And then we get into the episode. The gang are all, release Sarah Jane, and Mona's like, yeah, but Lukey, you said you could deal with it yourselves. And Harding is saying that all the people in the paintings are safe, and Mona will release them once she's found her brother. And she is giving her best side-eye emoji face right now, which is just very like, yeah, of course I'll release them. Shifty eyes. When they mention the brother, he growls on cue, because of course he does. If you mention the brother, he's got to growl on cue. Luke kind of lures Mona so that she's in front of a bench, and then he just shoves her and she falls over it, and he grabs the Sarah Jane painting and they flee out the room. And Mona says that she keeps forgetting that she has legs now. Bear that in mind. And then she looks towards the painting of a highwayman. The gang have just sort of run out the room, but they don't see that Mona Lisa or Harding or anyone chasing after them, so they're outside the room. But then they hear the Spurs jingle jangling, and they see the highwayman walk in, and they hide from him. And Luke runs off some spiel about the painting that he's from, which is another completely fictional one. And when Clyde says, Luke, I thought you didn't know anything about art, Luke says, well, I can't help remembering everything I see. I'm not sure if we've had that explicitly spelled out to us before, but that is because, as far as I'm aware, it was just always Luke is very clever. But now, explicitly, it's taken us to the penultimate episode of series 3, but now explicitly, Luke has a photographic memory. Interesting. So the Highwayman, or the Dark Rider, as he's called from this fictional painting called the Dark Rider, he has a bandana over most of his face, and he's being played by Paul Casey, who is basically the guy who you call to play villains whose faces are covered. Slitheen, Ood, Jadoon, that's him. You just call him in if you want to cover his face up, and it's just his role. Even Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Doctor Who. He's the guy. He spies the gang, and they run, and he fires at them. And Ronnie suggests that he's out of ammo after 2 shots with his old style guns, but then he just keeps firing. And I guess I like now that they've established that all the bets are off. When paintings come to life, they can just bend reality how they like. But I can see this causing some issues. Bear that in mind. He gets distracted by the growling of this brother, so the gang make a break for it, but Clyde runs the other way, trying to draw him away from Ronnie and Luke. Harding is protesting about hurting the kids to Mona Lisa. He says, I don't want anything bad to actually befall them, but he doesn't fully stand up to her, which is funny considering the thing about him being man enough in part 1. Harding tries to appeal to her by asking if she had children, and she says, well, there wasn't much room in the frame for them. But then he says, well, the real Lisa, before. And then she shoves him up against the wall for that, stating that she is the real Lisa, and the model's expression was due to trapped wind and just sort of generally dissing that old model who laughed like a camel and fired like something else, I don't know. And she also keeps calling him Arders rather than Harding. We see a rattling of a box in the basement, which is where this brother presumably is. And then Arders asks what kind of art could make that noise. But Mona asks what kind of art is over there. And of course, it's not art, it's a window outside. That's what she's looking at. She asks Harding to describe what outside is like, and he says, well, it's roomy out there, and some of it has grass on it, which is quite funny. And she, of course, wants to see the world, so Harding opens the window, and she reaches her arm out, and it kind of starts shriveling up and turning to stone, and she retracts it back in, and it seems okay. But she is very distressed that she has been released from the painting, but is apparently confined to the building. And Harding says, well, okay, I can make a home for you here. I can dedicate a wing to you. We've got a wing that's being refurbished. I can dedicate that entirely to you. You can live here. And I'd like to see that, actually. I'd like to see humanity getting on with an alien whose home is actually Earth. When I say that, it reminds me of Silurians. Didn't really get on that well with Silurians, but, it's that kind of thing. It'd just be interesting to see. Maybe it's been done already. But Mona says that she doesn't want to live here as art, she wants to be free. And her brother speaks to her in her head, and she relays that he says that they will be free when they are together. Clyde has crept into the room, and he's spying all this, as she points the blaster at Harding and says that they'll even be free of pathetic humans. So Harding is obviously very, very enamoured with her, and she does not care for his well-being at all. Luke and Rani worry for Clyde, but they decide that he can take care of himself, more to comfort themselves than anything, I think. And then Luke goes on about regretting rowing with Sarah Jane, and he hopes that he can get her out of the painting. And this is one of those things where it's the Sarah Jane Adventures, so of course they'll get her out of the painting, which is always an issue with main characters in peril. So I kind of just want them to hurry up about it. Mona mentions that her brother was in a painting so horrible that nobody has laid eyes on it for 500 years, and Harding is all like, oh, it can't be, it's just a legend, which means he knows about it. So, if he knows about it, you would have thought that he might have started wondering if the legend was true when he heard the growling. But he just does this very TV thing of, it's just a legend. Clyde gets snuck up on and captured by the Highwayman, who was just established to have jangly spurs, so he can't creep up on people because they hear him coming. That is disappointing. That's really disappointing that they just set up this thing where they're like, oh, nobody's coming for us. And then clink, clink, clink. Oh, someone's coming for us. And then apparently, I don't know, his spurs have got stealth mode on or something. It's just, how can you set that up and then break it in the space of so little time? That's one of the. I don't know why I'm really hung up on this, but it's one of the most disappointing things I think Sarah Jane Adventures has done. I've just established a rule and immediately break it. Luke and Rani suggests that the Mona Lisa being brought near to her brother is what made her come to life, because of course she was in the Louvre and it was all separated by quite a far distance, but now she's been brought to the UK and oh no, it's all gone wrong. They look in some books and Rani finds info on the Abomination, which of course was made up by Leo's made up artist neighbour. Leo, I call Leonardo da Vinci, just a Leo, oh Leo. And so it's a made up painting. The Abomination isn't a real painting, but for the sake of the story, it is. And the highwayman hauls Clyde over to Mona, and she basically says that they're going to go and feed him to the Abomination. We get a cross-cutting of both Harding and Rani explaining it to their respective accomplices. So Rani is explaining what she's read in this book to Luke, and Harding is explaining it to, well, probably for Clyde's benefit, but there's also Mona Lisa and the highwayman there as they haul him down to the Abomination. And that's quite neat. I like the little cross-cutting there. Basically, Giuseppe Di Cattivo painted it, and then he realised that whoever looks at it will go mad, so he locked it in a box made from wood from a gallows, which is just an interesting little detail, and then he secured it with a Chinese puzzle lock, and then he went mad, and so the secret to unlocking it was lost. Harding, who is too enamoured with the wonder of witnessing living art, unlocks the basement door, and in him, Mona and Clyde and the highwayman go. He shines the light on a statue, and we get a kind of zoom in and a dun, and then he shines the light on another statue, and we get another dun dun, and it's very silly and it's very Sarah Jane Adventures. And Luke remembers seeing Giuseppe's name, and takes Ronnie back to where he saw it, and reiterates that the same paint must have been used on the Mona Lisa and the Abomination. Not before he sets the Sarah Jane painting down, presumably believing it'll be safer on the floor completely unguarded than wherever he's taking it. I would like to know what happens if a painting gets damaged when someone's trapped in it. That'd be interesting to see, wouldn't it? Luke suggests that the mineral in the paint might have come from a meteorite a la Odd Bob, and then they find Clyde's dropped bag and sketchbook and they start getting worried. Clyde tries to convince Harding that Mona is just using him to get her brother, and then once she's done, she'll probably kill him or at least trap him in a painting. And he says, I'm aware of that, but I don't really know what to do. At least if I go along with it, I'm not going to get immediately harmed. So he's not really so enamoured with the idea of living art that he has to continue. He's basically continuing on to spare his life. In the basement, they uncover the box. It's rattling about with the Abomination inside it. All I can think about is Abomination from Marvel. I doubt it looks quite like him. But they have to unlock the box with this puzzle. But I imagine if Mona just shot it with the Sontaran blaster, she could probably unlock it. I doubt it's that sturdy, it's just made of wood. The lock itself is actually missing, and it turns out that the box that Luke picked up briefly in part 1 is what it is. It's a Chinese puzzle box. So it's very convenient that you saw that and remembered the name. And he says that they can use the box to bargain with Mona to release Sarah Jane. But then Mona walks around the corner with the gun pointed at Harding and basically says, I'll kill him if you don't hand the box over. Fair play to her. So they hand the box over to Harding, who grows a backbone and stands up to Mona by literally standing on the box and crushing it. And then she's about to shoot him when Luke steps in the way and says that if she doesn't shoot him, then Luke will tell her another way to release the Abomination, but first he needs to be brought to Clyde. Clyde is in the basement trying to strike up some conversation with the highwayman when he realises that the highwayman can't talk because he was painted with a bandana over his face, so he doesn't have a mouth, which raises the many issues that I was worried about earlier, like, I don't know, Mona's legs for starters. She wasn't painted with any legs. Why has she suddenly got them now and specifically brought them up and went, I keep forgetting that I've got legs now? Why? What is it with the... Where is the consistency? Where is it? It doesn't make any sense. I just... this is what just drives me mad about it. You can't make rules like this and then break the rules. Everyone reunites in the basement. Luke hands Clyde his sketchpad and book with a picture of the puzzle lock in it, and tells him to draw a new one so that Mona can make that real. But surely it won't have any inner workings, because how can he draw the inside of it at the same time as drawing the outside of it? Do you see why this is an issue? If you've set up the rules and then broken the rules, what even are the rules? Well, it doesn't make sense, but we just have to go along with it now. And Clyde is like, well, I don't particularly want to go along with this. I'd rather not release this abomination that drives everybody mad who looks at it. But Luke is all like, well, I know this is bad, but you gotta trust me, but I can't tell you what our actual plan is, because I got a plan, and if I reveal the plan, they're not gonna let it go ahead, so you need to trust me on this. And the gang just wonder if he's too obsessed with getting Sarah Jane back. That's, so obsessed that he's willing to risk letting this thing that will drive them mad or even kill them loose. Even Harding is there advising against it, going, this is a bad idea. You're literally just letting the abomination free. Can't recommend that you do that. But the gang trusts him enough that he might have something up his sleeve, so Clyde gets to work. By the way, Mona, she can't bring the photo in the book to life. It's only artwork. The photos can be art, but you know what I mean. It has to be something that has been drawn or painted or that sort of creative process. By this point, she's kind of gone mad with power. She's saying that she's got no care for the world outside. She has no use for trees and flowers. She wants fire and brimstone. Maybe she feels like the outsiders rejected her. When she stuck her hand out the window, that's all I can think of. I don't know quite why she's absolutely so hell-bent, but she is. Clyde finishes his drawing very quickly. Very good, by the way. Luke hands the drawing to Mona Lisa, and there is a thing where Clyde says that Luke has gone right over to the dark side, because sort of throughout these episodes, he keeps calling Luke his Padawan a lot, and all this sort of... He likes Star Wars, does Clyde. He likes to reference it a lot. And then Mona gets all red energy, zappy, all the zappy around her hands, and she zaps the paper, and the box forms out of the paper a bit, and it looks quite good coming out of this paper, and then they cut to her face. And then when they cut back, it's done, and it's fully out of the paper. Which is a shame, because I'd like to have seen the full effect, but I guess that they're covering up for not being able to pull it off, so they have to cut to her face to see her reaction to it. I think at this point her eyes roll back in her head. That just happens a lot as well. Like when her brother was speaking to her in her head as well, she just likes to act possessed, I guess. It's weird. It's weird. But she twists the box and it opens, which seems easy. I thought the secret to opening it was lost, so nobody's been able to open it in 500 years. But, I mean, does this Clyde-made one work differently? I guess, maybe. It's got different inner workings, but you can still unlock the thing. Is it the intention that's put into the art that then is manifested in real life? I don't know. We don't get an explanation. Maybe the explanation is... Maybe we don't need the explanation because it would just bog everything down, and well, why don't we just gloss over that? But it's just a little bit weird. Also, if she was benevolent, she could apparently make matter from nothing. She can just make it out of artwork, but she's generating real life things out of 2D artwork, which is an insanely useful and powerful power. That's crazy, really, and she can just apparently do it on a whim. She opens the box, the box that the abomination is in. She's used the puzzle box on it. She opens the box that the abomination was in. Light spills forth, and there's a big CGI clawed hand that pops out, and everyone shields their eyes except Mona, of course. And then we see some horns, and Mona reaches out for her brother, and I keep calling her Mona. The actual model of the Mona Lisa's name was Lisa, but this Mona Lisa who's come out of the painting stated that she wanted to distance herself from the model because she's gone, I'm the real Mona Lisa and not that model. So I don't think she'd mind me calling her Mona, so I'm differentiating it in my head by calling the painting Mona and the actual person that the painting is of Lisa. I think Mona just means lady, so it's Mona Lisa, it's just Lady Lisa, and that's the title, but there you go. Very luckily, the energy of the two of them being reunited, of Mona and Abomination, it spills out into the room, and it brings the K9 sketch that was in Clyde's notebook to life too, which was Luke's plan all along. Apparently he just happens to know enough about how this alien and how it works to be able to formulate this plan and risk everything on it. And so K9 appears up out of the sketch, fires his laser at the abomination and declares maximum pigmentation dispersal, so presumably kills it, though we don't really see, because that's kind of the point, because if you see it, you go mad, so we don't really see, and also it means they don't have to do as much CGI. And Mona grabs the Sontaran blaster and aims it at K9, and it fades away in her hand. And then the highwayman is next to go before he can shoot anyone, and she tries bargaining with Harding, and she says that she'll take that wing and she'll stay as a living piece of art, but he can't help her even if he wanted to. And she starts fading too, and she says, I could always think and feel even when I was in the painting, and Luke assures her that she still will be able to, but she'll be back in the painting where she belongs. And with the abomination gone, she can't get out again. And Clyde goes to congratulate K9, and of course he's faded away without them even noticing, which is surprisingly sad. Everyone is back to normal. They've all come out of their paintings. Luke reunites with Sarah Jane. They have a big hug. And how convenient is it that they'd be separated after a row to remind them how much they love each other? But of course, that's how stories work. I don't mind it. Overall, I'm a lot more satisfied with this ending than many other of Phil's endings. It's just the consistency and the bizarre choices that irk me in this one. But it isn't really bad. It's kind of just an average episode, you know? I'm fine with it. Harding runs past them in search of Miss Trupp. It's funny also, Phyllis Trupp is a name that I have just had whirring around my head for, 12 years? And I didn't know why, and it's just the name of this character because her name is Phyllis Trupp, because she's a museum curator's assistant and they must be called names like Phyllis Trupp. There's a misdirection that Phyllis Trupp and Lionel Harding is his first name, Lionel. They might get the happy ending together, but then she quite rightly states that Mona imprisoned her, and then he was all over Mona, calling her like Mia Bella and all. And so no, she's not all that happy with it. She's not enamored with him anymore. She doesn't love him anymore because she's seen who he truly is, and I quite like that. Because you could have had the classic ending of and then the people get together at the end, but it actually makes more sense to do it like this, and it's got the hint of comedy in it with Harding sort of getting his comeuppance. So I quite enjoyed that. That's a nice moment. Sarah Jane says that she almost feels sorry that Mona will be a living consciousness who will be trapped with no way to interact with the world forevermore, but also that she kind of struggles to have sympathy with someone who trapped her like that. And it's just really a terrible thing that Sarah Jane has been through, and all the people who were trapped in the paintings, that we kind of gloss over, because when you start thinking about it, you realise how horrible it really is. And Luke promises to clean his room when he gets home, and Sarah Jane says, well, while you do that, I'm going to be having a chat with Clyde about Sontaran blasters. And they laugh a little, because I imagine that Clyde has probably learnt his lesson. And then we roll the credits. And those last few minutes with the gang together with Sarah Jane make me realise how much I miss Sarah Jane in an episode, because she really wasn't in this one a lot. It was kind of Sarah Jane, like, maybe she was filming solo scenes at the same time, so that's how they could kind of fit that in, I don't know. But she's brilliant, and I can't wait for the next episode that's hopefully going to have more of her in it. Also didn't get a Mrs. Smith I Need You in this one. He wasn't in part 2 at all, but in part 1 he was kind of already up and running. But credits roll, and we get our next time. And next time, they've painted the Slovene orange. So I hope to see you there for the Series 3 finale.